Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to do some reviewing of factoring. So, you have this first sheet here, which is your sheet that we used earlier in the year to factor. We're going to focus on GCF, trinomial, difference of two squares, and some of the difference of two cubes. So, let's go ahead and tear this front sheet off. And let's jump into a couple of these problems here. So, looking at the first one, we want to factor x to the third minus 4x squared minus 5x. Where do we start? We always start with factoring out our greatest common factor. And so if you look at this problem right here, you can see you have a greatest common factor of x. And so we want to factor out the x. Now, when we factor out the x, we have to write what's left inside of the parentheses. So if I take an x out of x cubed, I'm left with x squared, and then minus a 4x, and then minus 5. Now, once we've done that, we pulled out our GCF, we want to see what's left inside the parentheses, the x squared minus 4x minus 5. And we can see that's a trinomial, so we want to go ahead and factor that if we can. And how we factor that is with our factor x. And so, what do we put on top? We put a times c on top. This is a over here, which is 1. C has a value of negative 5, and so we put a negative 5 up there. We take our b value and we put it right down there, which is negative 4. And we look for two numbers that multiply to get negative 5 and add up to get negative 4. And those numbers are negative 5 and 1. And so now we rewrite this in factored form. We bring down our greatest common factor of x. But instead of writing x squared minus 4x minus 5, we write it as x minus 5 and x plus 1. And that is factored. We are good to go. For the second one, we start out with our greatest common factor. So we can see we have a 3 and a 48. Both of those numbers are divisible by 3. We have y to the fifth and y to the third. So we want to pull out a y to the third. And we are left with a y squared when we take out a 3 and a y to the third. Minus 16. Okay. This is an example of difference of two squares. And if you look at sheet difference of two squares, we got to work with this right here, and we got to square root this, which is y, and we square root the 16, which is 4. And so, y plus 4 and y minus 4. Because remember, it's a plus and a minus. So you take the square root of that, plus and minus. So y plus 4, y minus 4. Don't forget to bring down your greatest common factor. And that one's factored. Yay. The last one, once again, look for a greatest common factor. 24, 6, and 45. That has a greatest common factor of 3. And, don't forget your z's. Z to the fourth, z cubed, z squared. We can pull out a z squared. And so we end up with 8z squared for our first term, plus 2z, minus, what's 45 divided by 3? 15. And now when we look at this one right here, we can do our factor x process. And so on top, I'm going to go a times c, negative 15 times 8, which is negative 120. And on the bottom, I'm going to put 2. And so we need two numbers that multiply to get negative 120 and add up to get 2. And those are negative 10 and 12. Okay. Now, the key thing here, when we rewrite our factors, we have to take into account that we have this 8 right here. So when we rewrite our factors, first of all, let me bring down my GCF. When we rewrite our factors, it's going to be x minus 10, but we have to divide it by an 8. So anytime this number is not 1, different than 1, we have to put it as a denominator underneath our numbers. And then we have x plus 12 divided by 8, and you put it in both of them. So our next step is to take these two fractions and reduce them. And so bring your GCF along for the ride. And this becomes x minus 5 over 4 and x plus 4 over 3. So we have our fractions reduced. Once we have our fractions reduced, we want to go ahead and bring the denominators out front. So I bring the 4 up here and the 3 right there. And so you have a final factored version of 3z squared. And then this first set of parentheses is, oops, I made a mistake. Let's go back up here. 10 divided by 8 is 5/4. How about 4 divided by 3 though? Or 12 divided by 8, this is 3 divided by 2. So let's make that change. 3 divided by 2. Okay? All right. 12 divided by 8 is 3/2. So make that change, my bad. So we have 4x minus 5 and 2x plus 3. There, that looks better. All right, sorry about that one. Okay, let's look at the next page, number 2. We want to factor completely. Now, key thing, notice I've got a perfect cube right here. So I'm going to use the sum and difference of two cubes, which is this set right here. So if you look at this, this is a minus, so it forms the a cubed minus b cubed. So a cubed is in the place of x cubed, so if I cube root both of these, that means that a equals x, and b cubed is 125, that means b equals 5. Because this is a subtraction between them, we want to use this form right here, the bottom one, and anywhere I have an a, I'm going to replace it with x over here, and any place I have a b, I'm going to replace it with 5 over here. And so let me write that down. We have a minus b, and then we have a squared plus ab, and then plus b squared. So where I have an a, I'm going to replace with x. Wherever I have a b, I'm going to replace with 5. And so we have x squared, and then here we have a times b, which we're going to rewrite as 5x. And here we have b squared, which is 25. For the last one, first thing we want to do is we want to look for our greatest common factor. And so 16 and 54, those are both divisible by 2, and we can pull out an x squared. So I'm going to pull out a 2x squared, and I end up with 8x to the third, and then plus 27. This has the form of a cubed plus b cubed, which means that a equals the cube root of this, which is 2x, and b equals the cube root of this, which is 3. It has the form of a plus, so it's going to be a plus b, and then a squared minus ab plus b squared. Now this one I'm going to throw in some extra steps just because we have coefficients on our x. So a plus b, replace the a with 2x, replace the b with 3. 2x plus 3. For the second set of parentheses, I'm going to do a big parenthesis, and then I'm going to put each of these terms inside a parentheses. So my 2x, I'm going to put in parentheses and square it. And then minus 2x times 3, since it's a times b, and then plus, just to be consistent, I'll do this, 3 squared. And now we have to clean up all three of these things right here. So 2x plus 3 stays the same. And then 2x times 2x is 4x squared, minus 2x times 3 is 6x, and then plus 9. And there's the factored form. The only thing we have to remember is this right here, our greatest common factor. We have to bring that back down and keep it as part of the problem. So we put it right there out front, and that is our factored form. Okay, thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.